All right, here we go for our first ever premiere inaugural episode of we don't really even know what to call this yet, but it's going to be about the state of Web3 gaming. Chris, it's awesome to have you here.
Thank you, sir. I'm honored.
Well, we're both co-hosting this, so I don't want the communication to sound like you're the guest and therefore honored to be here. I want to co-host this thing because we've both been in this industry long enough where I think we can start to grill other people.
Yeah, cool.
How's that sound? But yeah, so I mean, we've got a lot to cover. We can start from the standpoint of just the state of Web3 gaming in the industry. And by the way, this is an open floor. Like, we want people to ask questions. I have magical ways I could even pull people in here. So if someone's feeling like they want to jump on stage, talk about what they're doing, we can do that. I'll send you a link to StreamYard. You can join us in here for the conversation. But my hope is that in future episodes of this, as people learn a little bit about what we're doing, we'll be able to line people up and get them to talk about the games that we're working on. But, there's a lot of things out there that are kind of targeted at, like the retail token holder and folks like that. And that's totally fine. You're all welcome to be here. I think you'll learn a lot from this, but I wanted to have a little bit more of a focus of like behind the scenes, what it's like from a game developer's perspective, maybe even from the standpoint of like investors, the people who fund the creation of games. So I think it'll bring a little bit of a different perspective in this market. And I come at it from the technology side of it and just enabling people and getting them set up. So I get to see a lot of game studios. I get to see a lot of what goes right. I get to see a lot of what goes wrong. And that goes, by the way, for myself. Like, I built and shipped games to about 20 million players, and we fucked up a lot along the way, but we managed to send a few games out that did really well. So I've seen both sides of that. So yeah, that's the context here. So let's maybe take a moment to introduce ourselves for people that are maybe just getting to know each other for the first time. So I've been talking. So Chris, like, what have you been doing in games?
Yeah, so I'm Chris Heatherly, and for those who don't know me, I've been in games, media, entertainment for over 25 years. Was at Disney for 14. Was at Universal for 4. When I was at Disney, I ran various businesses, including Club Penguin and their mobile games business, which we grew into a top 50 publisher when I was there. At Universal, I built a games business for them. I've also worked at Network with Neil Young. I've built dozens and dozens of games, several top grossing games. Like Jon had a lot of had successes and failures, so I have points of view on both. And I've been in Web3 for probably about 4 years. This is my second Web3 startup. The first one I was an employee at with Recur, and now I'm doing my own startup called Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, and we're making a game called The Mystery Society.
Cool. We'll come back to Mystery Society a little bit because that's certainly super relevant to this. So my name's Jon Radoff. I started out in games long ago because I met my future wife in an online game. I was in college at the time, dropped out of college, started a game studio with her. So built one of the first internet-based games called Legends of Future Past. Did some stuff outside of games, building tech companies, building web technology, building big data analytics. Went back to games, worked on big Hollywood IP, so Star Trek, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, Archer. Worked with Chris on some stuff that I guess was doomed. Sorry, Chris, but
you. Sorry to all of us. Probably hurt you more than me.
No, I blame I blame Hollywood, actually.
Yeah, Hollywood.
But yeah, so we've worked together back then, and we've worked together more recently on Mystery Society. So the topic here is going to be Web3 and Web3 gaming. So it's a whole category that has gotten beat up a lot. It's gotten celebrated by certain people. It's outright reviled by other people. I think there's a whole segment of the market that thinks that maybe the whole idea of Web3 gaming kind of had its day already 2 years ago and already is gone. Like, like that's probably what most of the game industry, the quote unquote game industry, meaning like the traditional like AAA game developers and whatnot, think. What do you think, Chris?
Well, I think the traditional games industry can't find its ass with both hands right now. So I'm not really looking to them to tell me what the future is at the moment. I think, look, I think the traditional games industry, I think the paradigm of the last 10 years or so, or last 20 years has kind of, it has matured, right? So, console games have really kind of, reached a saturation point, right? We're just not selling any more consoles. The console base is not expanding. A $500-$600 piece of hardware is kind of a big barrier to entry. And that kind of puts a cap on just how big that industry can be. And the game and AAA games that are made primarily for console platforms, although also for PC, but they get greenlit, I think, on console numbers are really expensive, right? And it's a hit driven business, and it looks, it's starting to look like the theatrical film business where, people are spending 200-300 million dollars. I think it was Sega said earlier this year, they were talking about an $800 million super game, which to me is just crazy, on a single bet. So, I'm not saying console is dead, but it's a very hard, if you look at what drives that, it's just like theatrical film where it's driven by franchises, right? If you're GTA 6, then you have a great, opportunity. But if you're a startup, it's hard. PC and Steam has really been the one kind of green shoot and the one place in the industry that has been growing. Mobile is stagnant. And, I think it's a combination of factors, but really the platforms, my thesis is really that between console and mobile, they've closed the platforms off so much from the internet that they've lost the benefit of like organic, like links are a very powerful thing, right? And they've lost the benefit of all that interconnectivity with social media, which is really where everybody congregates online. And the only way you get access to it is through paid advertising, which is incredibly expensive. And so what you see is like the more Apple has kind of instituted these privacy things and whatever, they close mobile off. And so mobile's not growing, console's not growing. Steam is the one that's kind of the most open platform. And I think it's no surprise that it's doing better. But clearly the games industry in general needs a step function change in order to keep growing. And I think at least Western publishers are kind of running out of like their playbook is not working anymore. So then you look at Web3, and I think, we can get into Web3 games, but I think Web3 in general, I mean, I've never been more bullish on blockchain, like I think the political, after FTX, it looked really grim for those of us who suffered through the bear. But the regulatory winds are going our way. Congress or the House passed this Fit 21 bill. Now there's a lot of activity in the Senate to try to pass a similar bill to legalize crypto. I'm convinced that U.S. The U.S. kind of being the holdout in crypto has held the entire crypto market back. I think part of the reason you don't see more applications and more use cases for crypto is because a lot of the entrepreneur community globally is in the United States. And so, they've been hands off on crypto because of the regulatory concerns. So I think the fact that crypto may be legalized with a regulatory framework that's understandable before the end of the year, even in the United States, is very bullish. I think if you look at Base and the traction that they have with the Base blockchain, and some of the things they're doing with their wallets, the technology is now getting to a place where the costs are low. We have scalable, 2 years ago, the network was slow, the transactions were expensive, and wallets sucked, and the UX was just fucking
Three or 4 years ago, we were talking
right.
about how, I mean, one of the most common complaints was, look how expensive it is just to do any kind of, well, people would point to Bitcoin, but then Ethereum mining. It was legitimately expensive. It would cost you $50 to do like one smart contract. And that has completely gone away. So the environmentalist concern has gone away, by the way. Like, this stuff is as cheap as anything you can do online now with proof of stake. But the transaction costs have come way down, so that the technical um, ability to really run a game with microtransactions is possible now in a whole range of networks. I mean,
And speed and scale
all of
and
those.
wallets. This, I don't know if you played around with the Coinbase smart wallet stuff yet, but it's fucking magic. So I think that we're finally at a place where like the tech works and you can actually build something on top of it. So that's probably a good place to start the conversation. I mean, in terms of Web3 games, we've got a lot of developers out there developing stuff. I think the biggest question in Web3, to me, one of the big questions is like, what is a Web3 game really? And there are a lot of different takes on that. Is it, you know, are Web3 games AAA games that happen to have, tradable, that happen to have Web3 kind of enablement, or are they a
There's
different type of
examples of
game?
that. There's
What?
examples of that coming along. Like, so Shrapnel would be a claim at a AAA kind of shooter game with tradable objects in it.
Yeah, Parallel is a really good card
Really
collect
good.
CCG. That
Wild Card Alliance. It's
White
another one.
Card Alliance. There's a bunch of these.
Chris, you
Um,
play your game. Talk about it. It's fine. Shill your own game. Like,
yeah,
tell.
I mean, my game is different from those. I think those games are going down the road of um, games for core gamers. I think that the challenge with those types of games is that core gamers are the most crypto resistant, and I think they're one of the hardest to sell on crypto. My bet was more on casual. So we're doing a game kind of like Among Us, called the Mystery Society, but you know, up to 15 player multiplayer, live, real time play, voice chat. So really trying to do more of a social, very easy to play, very easy to learn, very familiar to style of gameplay. Where you're collecting different skins, and those skins can be tradable. And there's other Web3 things I could get into, but a big part of it is like skin collecting and trading. And I think that we'll see how that premise goes. I mean, we're just kind of getting to a place where we can really kind of open the game up. We did an alpha earlier this year that went really well, and now we're kind of coming back into what I guess I'd call the beta. The thing about Web3 though is that when you talk about the Web3 community that lives on like crypto Twitter or whatever, there's a lot of there's a lot of people there who are a lot more investors than there are players. And so I think the realization that the space is having is, you know, it's if we're gonna grow, if we're if Web3 is gonna be a thing, we have to bring people from Web2 into it. And we can't just be so insular and just market to ourselves all the time, because a lot of people in Web3 are not, they may want to buy your token, but they're not necessarily going to be a dedicated player of your game. So I think that, really the question is like, where is the product market fit for players? Is it this AAA idea? Is it kind of this casual thing that I want to do? The other thing that's kind of happening right now are Telegram games and this idea of like, games integrated with the messenger, integrated with the wallet. Um, you know,
Just
um,
talk about that for a little minute. That's such an interesting category because for years now, I mean, for people who are watching this from the West, you probably may not even know like about the existence of platforms like WeChat that are just so like prolific there, and gaming is integrated, payment systems are integrated, and then we have these messenger systems that are very very basic in comparison to what's available there. So Telegram is interesting in that they're actually starting to have some success with gaming in this category, whereas like I don't know how many times Facebook has tried to do a reboot of gaming, for example, and they have had several stabs at like HTML5 games embedded in their messenger platforms. What's different with Telegram, you think, that they're pulling this off?
um, well, I think that in the West, the problem has been that, in Asia, like um it's a more games forward culture, and I think they have seen games as both an important activity and an important kind of like um carrot to get people, into their ecosystem. And WeChat or Kakao Messenger in Korea, Line in Japan, these have been important launch pads for games forever, right? Going back, I don't know, at least half a decade, if not more.
Mhm.
Um, I think in the West, the problem is that big tech um, has a love-hate relationship with games, as does the entertainment industry. It's very strange um, that Western companies kind of have this quirk. But like Facebook got behind instant games on Messenger for a while, and then they kind of reverse course, right? Snap did the same thing. And so there's a tendency with instant games, what they call instant games as a category, which are like these messenger based games. TikTok has flirted with it. Like, people roll their eyes because they've had the rug pulled on them so often. The difference with Telegram is that, from what I can tell, it's not really an initiative from Telegram that's driving these games. It's more that you can have a Telegram bot that pops up a chat, and then that basically will give you a little play button. You press start and it will pop up a game over the Telegram messenger, and it can integrate with they have their own blockchain network called Ton that it can integrate with.
Mhm.
But I think that because it's happening more organically, at least somewhat organically, more organically, and it's not just reliant on like Telegram to do something, and it's not required for like their continual support to make it successful. It can succeed or fail on its own. I think that is part of the reason it's taking off, is because it's really more organic. Now, what are these Telegram apps? Like, there's a the one everyone is talking about is a game called it's from Hamster Combat, which is it's a token. And I think it's a hamster, some kind of hamster racing leader or something. But but they made this mini game that they launched in Telegram, and it's just an idle clicker game. And it allegedly has 100 million people playing it. Now, it doesn't. It's got, a lot of that is bots. And we've all seen videos of like phone farms and like elaborate setups that people are doing to play this game. But why are they doing that? They're doing that to basically farm the hamster combat token, because they're going to get in. The more they play the game, the more they're going to get an airdrop. And these types of incentivized mechanics have become, really common in Web3. And so I think that, but what is surprising, And again, there's a lot of bots, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But I think what these games have tapped into is a lot of people, especially in Web3, everyone's got Telegram Messenger, and it has this capability to host games in a way that Twitter doesn't, TikTok doesn't, Facebook doesn't currently. And so, they got a lot of users. And even though people are probably finding out about the game, not on Telegram, but on, but on Twitter, because they all have that Telegram app and it's easy to get to. And it's got very low. Yeah, this is it. And you just click the hamster.
Yeah.
And every time you click that, by the way, it's recording something on the blockchain. So every click is recorded on the blockchain. And this is a little fugazi, and there's a lot of fugazi stuff in Web3 that, we all wish wasn't as fugazi, but so they could claim, like, look at how many blockchain interactions we're driving. You know what I mean?
Hey, we got a first
look at
guest
this
in here. Look at how dynamic we're getting with this. We got Ian Cummings. Ian.
Hey
Ian, what's up?
Do you know Ian, Chris?
I don't think we've met.
No, I don't know Ian.
Ian's my old buddy from we shared a publisher for a bit, Tilting Point. That's a story.
A war story.
Ian, tell us about what you're working on.
Yeah, so I'm good to see. Sorry I'm late. My family life right now is just crazy. My wife just got home from surgery. My daughter is sick, and it's just like mayhem around here. So sorry I'm late. Everything's all good.
There is no late.
We'll provide advice on that if you need. This is kind of a love line meets games format.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
I need to share this to my crew. So yeah, what I'm doing, I've been working in Web3 for since 2021, and we have a horse racing game. So we have Photo Finish Live is the name of the game. We've been running it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was sort of our third horse racing game, actually. And it was an idea to try and prototype, what happens if we take mobile and bring it into Web3, and what happens if you add real money to, this sort of ecosystem we'd already built out. So a lot of it was very much learned on the fly, but yeah, we've been chewing the glass, man. We've been, working with Solana and through the bear, and a lot of ups and downs, but it's exciting. So yeah, good to meet you.
So you're on Solana.
Not really. That's sort of where we started, and we minted, and we do have a token on Solana, the Crown token, but we actually keep the game in kind of a very Web2 walled garden. And you can on-ramp your crypto to it. You can off-ramp your crypto out of it, but it can operate without any crypto tendrils. And that was a tough decision at the beginning, because it seemed like Solana was, at the beginning there was like Solana was just like flying, $20 to $80 to $200 to $250, and I'm like, holy crap, this is great, But at the same time, they started to have a couple of little outages, and that was when I started like, oh man, this is super dangerous to like bet the company on a chain like entirely, and they had a 2-day outage, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, if every user had to sign a transaction to enter a race, to buy a horse, to do, I was like, this would be like game ending, like if this was actually happening to us. So that was when we sort of decided, and I think there's been trade-offs. I still think it was the right decision to like basically make the game a little more, in its own little world that has connections to Web3. So majority of our audience is very crypto forward. They found out about us through token, they found out about us through NFTs or what have you. But
here's a little data on what it costs a game to be down by.
Oh wow, look at this.
Like it's probably worse for a blockchain or similar for a blockchain. I don't know what the economics of downtime in Solana has been. Obviously, it crushed the token for quite some time. Solana is in my company, so we love those guys. They've done incredible technology work. But here's a little stat here for you. So basically, it shows that even if you're down like, low single digit percentage of the month, it's going to cost you a really enormous percentage of your revenue. This is some data from Griffin Gaming Partners, who is a pretty significant VC fund, venture capital fund in the world of gaming. So Ian, I'm curious, like, what's the hardest part of building your game?
That's a good one.
Perspective.
That's a really good one. I mean, I think there's been so many really hard parts. I do think that the real money aspect of how serious it is one of the biggest changes. You know, you're just used to pushing stuff live. Like, oh man, I'd love to change the way this screen works, you know, like, let's just push it live. Let's just do it, you know? And I've been doing this forever. And then now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, that kind of broke this little thing. Whoops, no one can withdraw their money, you know, and oh, whoops, you know. And like, we were in beta for about...
You're a rug pull immediately.
Yeah. And it spreads like wildfire. And so we were in beta for about 10 months. And we ran the game as if it was real, but we gave everyone free money every month, right? So it was like everything about it was real. The currencies were real. Everything was real, except we would, you know, on-ramp them with our own cash so that it felt like it was real, but they didn't have to pay any money. And we did that for 10 months. We went live like April 20-something, and on like say the 24th, and on April 28th, as we're live, we got drained of 5 million tokens hacked, you know? And so you're like, oh, wait a minute, you know, like we were just in beta, and it just sort of like, there were probably you just don't think about it. You just like, you're thinking about like, of course you're doing hack prevention. We've done so much work of server side authentication. You know, there's all these things like we've done this for a long time, and you've taken it serious.
Yeah.
It's not like we were like just trusting the client or anything. It was like someone found a like duplicate transaction DDoS attack that sort of overwhelmed. It was relatively sophisticated, but you just didn't think. We're like, all right, we're live. And then it's like, there was some guy in Russia just like, hell yeah, finally, you know, and we just didn't, you don't think about how dangerous it is when you're in that world. So that's one of the hardest things, is like converting from this, like, I love iterating fast and wanting to just like push stuff out to your community immediately, but with real money on the line and the economy on the line, like there's no rollback. There's no, like, it has to be, and there have been these things where they go wrong. And I always tell them on the team, it's like, are these lawsuit level bugs or are they not? You know, like that's, you normally in game dev, you have like, you know, low, medium, high, critical. And then now I added the extra one, which is lawsuit, because it's just like, if you're taking money from someone on an error, on a bug, you know, especially on a multiplayer game where like maybe one person gets an advantage because of a bug and you don't, you know, those are the things that like, oh God. So that's been one of the hardest parts.
You're scaring everybody off of Web3. You know, that's good.
Well, I think this is why
the market aren't ready for this. Chris,
sorry.
No, it's totally cool. This is actually supposed to be like a transparent conversation, like for developing games, like the real talk about like, what is it like to be in this industry? What are the opportunities? What are the downsides? Like I think there's just too much happy talk about how amazing everything is, and it's more geared like a retail person who wants to speculate on tokens. And this talk is not anything about like making money on Web3 games or tokens or anything. There's a countless number of degens you can go to for those talks daily, like every hour.
This is a developer. This is Dateline for developers. Loveline for
Crossfire.
Chris, I mean, what's the hardest thing been?
It's funny. We've had some of the same experiences, which is, it feels like every time you want to go push, like there's the blockchain, you know, I always say like the worst aspect of the blockchain is the immutability.
Yeah.
Which is supposed to be
as a game dev,
the best feature is the worst feature.
And we all have updatable contracts, right? So we're thwarting immutability with our, you know, with upgradable contracts anyway. But and I know what you mean. I mean, we have an upcoming tournament and we're giving away money in the tournament, and you know, like I'm eating a bottle of Tums because, you know, we're, you know, like we're getting close, and And I was like, oh, we need to be done on Wednesday so we can test. And then we weren't done on Wednesday, and we weren't done today. And like, I was like, guys, we really got to be done tomorrow because we're going live next Wednesday. I can't move it because of the marketing. We gotta test, right? So it's that is the scary part. I think that, like, you know, we're on the Immutable platform. We just moved to Immutable, so I'm really new there, but Immutable abstracts some of this stuff away. We're not able to use all their APIs because we're doing too much custom stuff. But they have, for example, like a minting API that you can go through. They have, you know, wallets is an API. You know, if you look at Coinbase and the new, like, I'm so fucking impressed with Jesse Pollock and what he's doing with Base. Like, I think that guy is like the best product manager I've probably ever seen. Like, maybe he's a shit show somewhere behind the scenes, but like from what I can see, he's like, I mean, amazing, you know, and leadership, communication, community building online, and just how he works with the team and ship stuff. But they just shipped a bunch of Coinbase APIs, and like they've abstracted all that shit away where you're able to trade crypto now and NFT. I think NFTs as well, but definitely crypto through an API and not interacting with the chain directly at all. Yep. And they even showed like USDC, gasless USDC transfers today. You know, so I think that there's going to be more of these like abstraction layers that will make it so that, like, you know, so that devs can work through APIs and don't have to touch, you know, the metal as much, right? To touch the blockchain as much. And I think that probably, I certainly would feel much more comfortable trusting someone else's security that, you know, had a big team like Coinbase or somebody. But because I certainly don't have those resources, but I think that, you know, this year I think that stuff is coming that will make it easier for developers, you know?
So I experimented with Base just recently, and we were doing basically a big sweepstakes, and talk about the heart palpitations and the Tums. You know, it was like $100,000, you know, sweepstakes where we were creating a superfecta, which is the 4 horses in a row for the Kentucky Derby. And so we do all the math. There's 116,280 permutations of a 4-horse finish with a 20-horse, you know, field. And so we mint 116,280 scratch off tickets, you know, and the people could scratch them off. And if they win, then they get the right order, then they would win $100,000. And we start building it on Solana. Solana's going down. This was recent. I mean, this was in April, you know, the transactions aren't landing. And similar, like we've built a decent amount of APIs of our own to talk to the chain. And then we also sort of talk to Helios and the other providers, the RPC providers, to talk to the chain. So we're not actually like right in there on the Rust Solana side. But everything just like sucks, man. It was so hard. It would not land, and you wouldn't get results back. Your retry logic is different from anything you've ever done before. They don't, you know, it's like people just start spamming the chain and just waiting for it to land rather than like try, retry. So we ended up going to Base and just basically, let's do the mint with Coinbase. They were an investor in our seed round, and they were super like, yes, please come try and build stuff. And I was shocked at, like, I don't know if you've messed with Third Web, but that sort of contract deployment, it was just like, whoa, what a difference. And I remember telling all the people in Solana, I'm like, you got some catch up to do. Like, this was really delightful. And I could update it easily. Yes, it's, you know, on the chain, but it didn't feel so immutably scary where you're like, well, as soon as I push, I'm freaking hosed. I can't change this thing. I can't do it, you know. So there's been a little bit of that going on. So, but I think Solana, you can see, I mean, obviously John's building tools for it too, but Solana's got a Game Shift, which is a product that they're building to basically pull out from Solana Labs, where, you know, you're able to directly talk to the chain. I've been helping evaluate that a little bit because, it's just like, it's too much infrastructure. Like, it's already hard enough. Like, we don't need to get that down.
This is my thing with Solana, right? Is that it's really about the composability and the fact that the EVM just has, you know, almost every other chain, you know, is EVM, right? And there's a million different protocols and a million different like things that you can use there's so much infrastructure off the shelf that that's good that you can craft together to make stuff that just doesn't exist on, because Solana is Rust and, like Sui. I was talking to somebody about Sui today and I was like, oh, like, because they gave him a grant and I'm like, I love those guys. Anthony Palma's a good friend, but I'm just like, man, like you're giving up as a developer, you're giving up so much, infrastructure and so much of the ecosystem. It's like when I used to be in the consumer electronics business, and we made like electronics in the Hong Kong kind of Shenzhen region, where Apple makes all the iPhones. People would always say, well, why can't Apple move the phone to, move phone development to the United States? Well, the answer is that there's a whole ecosystem for like every fucking part, like that little, like that little gasket there, and like everything. Like there's a whole ecosystem of thousands of, of parts suppliers and finishers and fabricators and not to mention the logistics and everything. Like it's very hard to extract yourself from that. And I think EVM has kind of become that gravity well. And when we didn't have base, I think the knock on the EVM ecosystem was, well, it's really expensive, and base. I think Polygon, like Polygon is, my experience was it was fairly cheap, but there have been times where it wasn't, right? And and
I never
wasn't as
quite
scalable.
understood. Yeah, it was hard to get money in. It was it was always, I never quite understood why Polygon was saying they were the home for gamers, because I could never figure it out. But Base, I felt sort of naturally a little bit better on it.
Yeah, now that we have
People
Base,
try
I
to
mean,
make
Base is really Solana for Ethereum, right? I mean, for the EVM.
Yeah.
So we tried to make it easier for Polygon and a bunch of these chains. But let me just interject a couple things here. So first of all, we've got over 600 people in the live audience, which is awesome.
Wow.
That are interested in this subject.
Should have taken a shower.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Nick, so two things. One, if like with this big of an audience, like you've got some experts in video games, Web3 games, game publishing, pretty much everything you can talk about here. So post your comments and we'll bring them right up on the channel and we can talk about that. So I know with 600 people, a bunch of you have questions in your mind that you want to get to. If you're working on a game and you want to talk about your game, guess what? This is the channel for that. So shoot me a DM on X. It's at @JRadoff in the comments right now. And you can join the live channel. We'd love to hear about your journey as a Web3 game developer, building what you're building. So that's a possibility as well. And if not this time, we'll bring you up next time. But I love that you guys are talking about infrastructure. That's my business. So I come at this technology right now. It's funny because I asked both of you like what the hardest thing was, and you started with like the financial stuff and the complexity of that. Totally get it. But then we spent like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes talking about how complicated infrastructure is.
Infrastructure is, yeah.
Hilarious for me because like you literally just made the case for my business's existence. But we came at this to try to solve a lot of like complexity in bringing games to market. So when you build an online game of any kind, you've got a huge number of concerns over like the pipeline of getting things over the wire and published, with backend server operations, your game logic, you've got social systems, shopping interfaces, like all this stuff, and then blockchain adds yet more complexity to that. So that's kind of our business. And when we talk to developers, we very frequently see studios that fall into a couple of categories. One is people that have built online games in the past and they built all that infrastructure and they're like, never again will I do this.
Yeah.
In fact, one of our competitors, Metaplay, I like those guys a lot, have a lot of respect for them. Metaplay did this research report. They found that the average publisher who got to scale and had to build their own live infra is like $22 million at scale to build that. Not a surprise. So some publishers much more than that. We all of us here have worked on games at scale, so like we've seen what it takes to do that. So there's just so much complexity in that. We wanted to remove that complexity from the equation, and with blockchain, provide that abstraction so you can design your economy, and you don't have to decide if you're going to be on Solana or Polygon or Base or like whatever, or Mutable. Like you could just start building your game. Like, I mean, literally, Chris, that's kind of what we've done with you. Like, disclosure, Chris is building on Beamable, and I don't think you had decided what chain you're on in the beginning, and now you're kind of converging on that. So kind of makes it a late decision where you can build the game however you want.
Well, we built Polygon. We launched on Polygon for our alpha, and then we migrated to Immutable, which required us to integrate the Passport, which is their wallet, and we were able to do that in 2 weeks. We actually got the migration to Immutable faster than we had the contract. Then we got the contract done.
And can you clarify, like, what is how much are you talking to the chain, and what's on the chain? You know, like, I guess, or are you abstracted away?
So right now it's NFTs is what's really on the chain. So our avatar is on the chain. It's a dynamic avatar, so it's a 1150. It's a single 1155 contract, and then we have all the avatar items and the avatars sit in the same contract, and we can assign ownership of the avatar items to different avatars. So you can buy an avatar, and it took us a long time actually iterating on this quite a bit to get it to all work correctly. You can configure an avatar with, rare items or whatever, and then sell that whole avatar like a PFP. You can sell that whole avatar and all the items transfer with it, or you can unequip the items and sell them individually, or somebody can make a bid. Like, one of the things we had to work on was like the ability for somebody to bid on an item that's equipped to your avatar, and then when it's removed, it gets unequipped in the game. And so all of that kind of logic to make it work the way you would expect it to work was quite a bit of work. But that's that's the main thing that's on chain right now.
So
and then the ID system, and then the using Passport for ID. So Passport is basically their wallet, Immutable's wallet, and that wallet uses social sign-in, so you can use Apple or Google to sign in.
Nice.
I think you can also provide your own email password or your own email, but they use Apple or Google, and so it's just very quick to get in and very intuitive for normies.
Noah has a question here. So with the APAC region making up majority of the Web3 gaming space, what difficulties do you see in terms of the regulatory political hurdles? How do you overcome them? I know you love talking politics and you love regulation, Chris. So like, what you should just weigh in on this.
I'm a big time libertarian, so
I didn't know.
So he's outed me. Fine. We can talk about liberty.
Yeah, this has devolved into a liberty chat. Yeah.
Thank you, Jonah. So
It's true.
So Jonah distracted me. Regulation. So Korea, I believe it's illegal, but it doesn't stop anyone. They just all use VPNs. China, same thing. The CCP is very anti-crypto, and recently came out and made some statements that if we go to Bitcoin, that it'll be the end of the financial, the world economy or something.
Yeah.
The CCP is actually, I saw this super scary article yesterday that there's this project called Project, I think it's M, that basically it's like 26 or so countries are working on a central bank digital currency that's their own. It's not a CBDC, but it's their own kind of like, it's like a private blockchain kind of thing. So I think the CCP is going to try to push in that direction and push people away from crypto, but they're going to have to find some version of it that works for them, because I think that you're going to need, like, everything is going to be tokenized. The rest of Southeast Asia is like wide open. Japan is pretty open. Japan is actually, I think, pretty forward from what I can tell, from what I've heard on crypto, and companies over there are pushing pretty aggressively. Obviously, Singapore is a hub of activity, Indonesia, Philippines. So Asia is really, as usual in gaming, kind of leading the way. But really Europe is already regulated, put out some crypto regulations. They're fairly, I think that are fairly, workable. It's really the US that I think has been the holdout. And like I said, I think the lack of regulation in the US has sort of held back the entire world. And if we get over that hurdle, I think it's going to be game on and we're never going to look back. But I don't know if anyone else has a thought on regulation.
Well, let's maybe hold that thought for a second, because I want to welcome Matt up to the stage here. So Matt DM'd me over on Twitter and said he wanted to talk about on-chain games. So really cool topic, Matt. So since you're here to chat with us about that, we'll let Chris jump back in when maybe, I don't know.
He just bailed.
Maybe the CIA just shut down his internet.
His internet just got locked out. Yeah,
I'm back.
Chris, we thought the CIA shut down your internet or something there.
I was trying to log in so I could talk in the US
regulation. Matt, so since you're here to talk to us about your ideas around fully on-chain gaming, I think is what you mean. Like, what is that? I think this is interesting because I want to understand, like, what does that actually unlock in terms of like a gameplay experience? Like, what's interesting from like a fun and standpoint when you can do that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different ways to answer that. It sort of depends, I guess, on your perspective and where you're coming from. I think the most common response to that is when it comes to composability. Being fully on-chain, you've got sort of the money Legos aspect of game development, where developers can quickly compose on top of each other's games and smart contracts and mechanics and whatnot. There's the sort of permissionless nature. People talk about the immutability and permanence of these games as well. So you can have almost like a protocol that persists, and you've got statistics and history and lore that develop over time. Look, candidly, as someone who works in this space, I happen to have a lot of conviction in it, but it's still quite early and largely theoretical. Yeah. But happy to kind of discuss it. I just happened to stumble across your guys' conversation and thought I'd raise my hand as someone who is active in the space and loves listening to different perspectives.
And what's your game? I'm sorry, I probably missed it because I fucked up.
No, I didn't do like a proper introduction. So I work at a company called Cartridge. Cartridge is building infrastructure for fully on-chain games. They're also a core contributor to the Dojo engine and tool set, which is a fully on-chain games engine in the Starknet ecosystem. Previously worked in mobile product management, EA, Jam City, Pocket Gems, companies like that. So coming from sort of the mobile gaming, traditional gaming space, and I've also been like a writer and analyst at Navic and other places for a long time.
Look at this. You were quick on the draw with that one, John. This SGPT. I think Big Black Colt sounds like it's somebody from the photo finish ecosystem. If I had to guess, yeah, obviously it is. See, they just want to race their horses. I mean, I think that's been an interesting learning from. There was a lot of chest beating around decentralization, and I think if you remember 2021, sort of like, I can't wait to take my asset from this game and play it in that game, which I always just laughed at. Like, no one's going to do that.
Well, it's funny to say that because I do think Roblox is the counterexample of that, showing that there's
that's true.
But it's going to.
I love that.
Right, it'll probably take a while, and it's not going to be like League of Legends to World of Warcraft item transfer. Yeah. Like, there's no.
Yeah, I mean, Fortnite and Roblox are doing it. I mean, it's sort of like you can use your Rocket League shit in Fortnite. It's like you can kind of, they're already sort of doing it, but like the laughable part to me was like, I'm going to invest in this company because the blockchain will enable this to happen. And I'm just like,
Right.
well, you got to convince the other dev that to import your asset, and they're going to be like, hell no, we're not doing that. So, yeah, I mean, like for me, yeah, I guess it would make a lot of sense if I could import Roblox characters in as jockeys, but I think Roblox would be like, hell no, I'm not letting you do that. You're stealing our IP. But anyway, what has been interesting to see though is like the more that these games get finished, like Photo Finish, you know, like I think we had a head start just because we took a lot of our previous games assets. Then you start to see people back off of that stance. They're like, you know what, I just want a good game, and you know, I don't really care about because again, we are very centralized. Like we own all the assets. We have all of the control. It's in a damn database, you know, and like we do have these chain connections, and we want to decentralize over time. But that's such a hard bet to take when you're still trying to figure out if your game's fun.
Yes.
The last thing you want to do is add like all this, like, oh shit, we accidentally deployed the wrong, you know, thing. So I think over time that will become a lot more normal, especially as infrastructure providers make it easier. But right now, just people want cool shit, you know, fun
Yeah,
games,
I mean,
right?
although I've been pretty impressed with what Pirates Nation is doing, you know, I mean, they've made a game that, you know, it's turn-based, you know, PvP, but it's all on chain. Like, you know, it's not going to work for everything. Like, I don't think you're going to be doing real-time multiplayer on chain very soon. But, you know, I think there's a lot of asynchronous, you know, kind of asynchronous games that you could play poker that way. You could play, you know, there's a lot of stuff you could do that way. I mean, the advantage to me of decentralization really is the game can live forever. And then, you know, the advantage to that, or theoretically it can live forever, and you can turn you could open source the client or whatever. And, you know, I think the advantage to that is when you sell NFTs to people or sell stuff to people, particularly NFTs, you know, they have some surety that they'll be able to use those forever. It's like, you know, Club Penguin, there are still people running pirate servers of Club Penguin, and you know, you know, if we
Red Alert, I think Red Alert, there's still, you know, people are putting up servers, all these old games because they're like, I
all
want
the
to play
time,
still.
I mean, Ultima Online, you know, is another one that people run private servers and actually make money. You know, if Club Penguin had been built with the idea of decentralization, where, you know, the community could keep running it long after Disney had an interest in it, it would be a viable business for somebody today. It might not be as big as it was when it was owned by a corporation, but that community would still have a place. That community would still show up, and they would still pay. And you know, these community-based games, MMO-ish type games, they can live live service games. They can live a really long time, possibly forever. And the only thing, but at some point, you just reach a point of like unsustainability where you have to pull the cord out of the wall.
Server bills are too high.
And decentralization, I think, is a solution to that. And it ultimately makes ownership more valuable because it's true forever ownership, right?
So, I mean, if it's any indication of current interest in Web3 as just like a gaming category, we're pushing 1,000 people in the viewing audience here. So
that's awesome.
People are definitely curious about this stuff.
Where are you getting all these people from? Are you like farming them off your Telegram hamster clicker?
That's my shill army. They just go wherever I.
That's amazing. You're my new head of marketing.
But no,
half hamster clickers, half horse owners.
I'm thankful for all of you who've shown up to learn about this, and really grateful for the interest. So clearly there is a lot of interest, so we'll keep doing it. I love that you brought up decentralization, because I've got kind of an insidious dark plan, but it's actually about liberty, to go back to that, which is bringing liberty to all the Web2 game developers out there, because not every game is going to need a tradable economy. There's plenty of perfectly fun single player experiences or multiplayer that doesn't have that. Like I don't buy into the idea that like, oh, once people own assets, there's no going back. Well, for certain kinds of games that will be true, but for others, it just doesn't matter. Like there's pretty wide range of entertainment tastes, and people should just be kind of realistic about that. But infrastructure is still the domain largely of three companies. It's, Amazon and Azure and GCP, and that's where everybody's online compute runs. There are some more close to bare metal providers like servers, Gcore, i3D, people like that who help a little bit. But for most developers, you're on one of those, and the technology to build your infrastructure is really hard, and that's what Beamable helps with. But something we announced earlier this week that kind of insidiously turns every Web2 game that's willing to into a Web3 game underneath, because we're providing a decentralized compute architecture. So that's I think exciting, because we can reduce a lot of costs. We can actually provide a lot more stability. People will know that the network is always there. They don't have to worry about technology options going away. And it also opens it up an ecosystem. A big problem with the backend today is there is really no ecosystem. Like there isn't a market of people who create tech that plugs into your backend and just simplifies it. There are a few point solutions out there, but it's not like you have with Unity or Unreal, where everybody's just adding assets and components. And like you go to the Unity asset store, I forget how many listings are in there, 100,000 plus things in there. Yeah. There's no ecosystem at that level, but for this much more complex world of the backend. And we think one of the reasons why is because of how fragmented backend just is. So if you can defragment it, open it up, decentralize it, then you start creating all these incentives for people to participate and contribute to building an ecosystem. Is it really like all that stuff that we spent half the conversation talking about, like infrastructure and all this complexity? Like, no, the reality is no game developer should actually have to do that. So no.
I want to, and I would love to not. We would all love to not. I think the majority of us would just like, please, someone else build these. Like, I can't tell you. I mean, I feel like I've shipped 100 games at this point. I don't know. A bunch of them were Madden, but I've shipped so many games, and every single one of them, you're like, we need a leaderboard, and they go, oh, well, how many results do you need in the query? And you're like, all of them? No, we can't do that. Like, maybe we can give you 100. Shit, okay. Well, we wanted to have a feature where the top 10% make it in and they get a reward. Well, we can't show that because that could be million. The data. It's just like it's these things that then the feature spirals out of control every single time that we're working on it. You're like, why hasn't someone built this already? Like, why do I have to rebuild this? And you always end up trading off something, and you don't do it how you want it. And so I'm like, please. I remember like really bitching at the Unity team at one point of like, you guys keep adding render pipelines. Why don't you add this stuff? Like we're all adding these same things over and again. But luckily, John, you're building it, not Unity, because it would get done anyway.
Our idea, this may not be the exact technical specification we ultimately deliver, because we're still kind of playing with the right architecture, but in my mind, code components that can execute on the back end are almost kind of like another kind of NFT, where there's a creator, they make it, they can allow people to use this package of code. And similar to the idea of getting a royalty when you trade the NFT, well, in this world, it's not about trading it. You're going to get it and use it. You're not really going to sell it to someone else, but you would be able to generate income off of utilization. So to the extent that there's a network, requires network utilization to deliver the infrastructure of your game. Well, if you've made the genius leaderboard system and people are like, this is the leaderboard that drives engagement in my game, you decide what royalty you want to charge for that, and you get a portion of that. So that's going to be a big part of what we call a decentralized physical infrastructure network that we're building for computer games. DPIN is the category that a lot of people are using. And I think this could be transformative, not just for the Web3 games that we're talking about, but like all games. Like, and
Oh,
the
yeah.
new thing is it's harnessing the infrastructure of blockchain, like in a really awesome way. Like, and it's not just what we're doing, but this whole category of DePIN is super compelling to me because it's actually one of the best use cases for Web3. It takes the scarce resource, which is basically hardware, physical infrastructure. It allows people to access it. And instead of having one company or a set of a few companies responsible for doling out access to that, it orchestrates access to all of that compute resource with a particular software stack that's guided towards a particular domain, and then essentially uses the power of blockchain to do the value exchange aspect. So the value exchange meaning you pay for the server and the owner of the server gets paid for you having access to it. And then also the tokenization makes it possible to kind of incentivize the rollout of the network as you're building up. So like I literally, like, short of just like the basic property of blockchain, which is it can be a payment system a la Bitcoin, like to me, it's like one of the great use cases alongside, games and open trading economies and things like that.
Yeah, because what you kind of started with like a referral page, basically, that was like, oh, you can, like, here's some other software that plays well with Beamable, right? And the next step to that is, oh, you want to, and maybe you even have this, oh, you want to add that to Beamable? It's a one click, right? Gets added. And then the next step beyond that is, oh, you want to add that to your Beamable package or whatever. Like, that's kind of like the Unity Asset Store. That's, that's $10 a month or whatever. And then the blockchain handles all those payments. You don't have to build a big complicated payment system, right? Like, think about the sales advantage for those smaller developers who are looking to draft off somebody bigger that don't have to develop as much of their own sales funnel, and they're pushing people to you. And like, this is the thing that composability plus payments on the blockchain can enable that you just can't do in Web 2,
And I'm hoping that it can actually unlock some additional value in game studios as well. Like, of course, your business at a game studio is entertaining players, but I have yet to ever meet a game studio that didn't think they had some kind of secret sauce on the technology side, that they had kind of figured out something really clever that they could do. And okay, maybe for that reason, you'll want to keep it to yourself. But another option is maybe that's something that other people could use, and it is just more funding for your business, because every game studio just needs more sources of revenue.
Well, I think the other thing that's cool about what you're doing with the DePIN stuff is, as a game that's built off of Beamable, is, like, since Ian was talking about like leaderboards, like, one of the things we eventually want to do is let like communities run their own game right within the game. And so, I can imagine, basically, I mean, Beamable's already got tools for, WYSIWYG, like, go in, fill out a form and spawn a leaderboard, spawn new currencies, stuff like that. I mean, we could make a more kind of consumer friendly interface for those tools that hits the same systems in Beamable and lets people deploy their own leaderboards, their own tournaments, their own rewards, their own event currencies, even their own battle passes. Like, that's where you start to get into, like, the ability for communities to kind of create a life of their own and run their own business. I mean, this is what I realized about the creator culture, is that what these social media platforms did for these like YouTubers and stuff is they created an ecosystem that at first they didn't provide them any tools. And so the creators kind of figured out how to make their own business with sponsorships and merch and stuff. But then they started adding, tips and gifts and other like native ways to monetize. And then the creators got even, creative with that, where it's like, oh, you buy this gift and I'll do this thing, or, oh, you buy this gift and it actually hooks into a game and it does something. And, those platforms have become, if you're a YouTuber or a TikToker, like, you're building your own business on that platform. Right. And what I think, kind of Beamable and what we'll be able to do with some of these like UGC driven games, Web3 driven games, is for some of these communities to build their own business within your game, kind of like you can do with the Fortnite or a Roblox, but you won't have to be that scale and that kind of company. And players will be able to run their own community and monetize it and make it. That's the thing. When they're able to make money off of it, then it becomes like a self kind of perpetuating thing. And it's not reliant just off of kind of the love of fans, you know?
Yeah.
I'd love to.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, there's an investing framework idea that like each new platform, each new UGC platform enfranchises a new type of creator, a new class of creator. And so I think what we're going to start to see here, and we're already seeing in Web3, is these sort of player builder types that are able to realize the value of their creations. This is something we're seeing, just to talk my own book for a moment, we're seeing in fully on-chain games as well, where these games they're headless basically. So someone's going to make a client, the original developer will make a client for the game, but if you don't like it, Ian or Chris, you can change it, you can improve the UI, you can change it entirely, and you can monetize that client in your own way and also be paid out for the engagement that you're seeing on that client by driving more players to the underlying protocol. So this is something that we talk a lot about internally, and it's coming up more and more.
The composability is one that can't really be overstated, because it's the next level of creativity. So right now, it's the next generation of UGC, if we want to use that term. So user generated content. So UGC right now is amazing. Like there's a lot you can do with it. You can build levels, you can create whole Minecraft servers with your own worlds, and it's essentially what all of Roblox is built around. It's what Fortnite creator mode is built around. It's what a lot of whole new next generation of games like that are highly moddable, everything from Terraria to Ark Survival to you name it. Like UGC is awesome. This is a new kind of UGC. And I'll give you a really specific example of like, I wish that blockchain existed at the time for this game, or that it had been a blockchain game. So between a couple of companies, I once took a company public, and after exiting that company completely, I just spent a longer period of time than I want to admit when I wasn't scuba diving and traveling the world, just basically playing computer games. And one game that I got super deep into at the time was Guild Wars. And my wife put together a pro sports team. Like we had paid players on the team and stuff. And we're like, okay, but there's no tournament system. Like there's just once in a while, they do sort of this event every few months. And it was like, I know, must have been some Herculean effort for their community team to like arrange it. And we're like, there's got to be more frequent tournaments. So we're just going to run the tournament system, and like, we'll do the tracking and the fairness. And like, but it had to be completely hands-on managed by us. So no wonder like Arena didn't actually want to run this thing. It was a lot of work. So, but we as the players did it. But if this had been actually on chain, and by the way, on chain for types of data that are not necessarily financial, like we talk about the financial transaction part of blockchain a lot, but there's actually a wealth of things that are just about accurately and transparently recording information. And one example is match records in games. Like if all you do is record match records from competitive games on chain, you can create a composable ecosystem where you have player generated tournaments, player generated events. You can create entire metas around the game that consume that information. In some ways, I think that is going to be a bigger category than just the trading aspect of items within games that I'm particularly excited about.
I was going to mention if you had a chance to open it up on a browser, so photofinish.live, there's a /tracks. This is an interesting thing that a lot of people have asked, why did you even need Web3? And I think this has been sort of our killer app feature. And you talk about entrepreneurs and stuff, that the tracks in our game are, there's like 6 of them, right? Where all the horses race, and every time people race there's profit that goes to the track, right? There's a vig, there's a cut of these races. So yeah, if you open the little hamburger and then just go to tracks, or /tracks on the URL. But so this was the big thing. So we owned all the tracks. Every bit of the VIG comes to third time, right? As you would expect. But over time now, what we've done is now these tracks are being taken over from us through the token staking. And so now you can see, if you scroll down, D-Stables is a good example there of like, those guys, that's not us. That is a community out there of like, they did their own NFT mint. They have their own Discord. They stake, million+ crown on this track.
Wow.
And they have their own community around it. And now they've made north of 7 figures, I think, so far in the game by being the operator of this track, by racing. Awesome. And so now it behooves them to go market and like attract people to come race at their track, because it's like, hey, we're going to host a stream. We're going to give away free shit. We're going to do whatever. And we're just at the infancy of that, because I feel like that's the like next level of sort of decentralization. Unlock is like when those track owners have a lot more control of like what happens there. What's their VIG? Do they do free racing Tuesdays? Do they do whatever it is? Then it feels like we can really be like, all right, cool. You guys take it from here. Like, obviously, we're never going to go away, but there's so much more like fun, interesting marketing that they're going to do that we just don't have time. We're always like in the trenches, and so, yeah, I think that's the model
you're already seeing
games take. Yeah, those people are super successful running those tracks, right? And
that is really,
it's been one of the like neatest ways
that's awesome.
Is different. It's not what you would have do in Web 2, right? You just can't really, right? That where you're like, we're not rev sharing, we're just giving the keys to them, right? It's sort of a different vibe altogether. But yeah, I'm excited for more games to build that model out where you are like, you start with owning everything, and then over time just let them take it from you, because they'll do that. They'll self-organize themselves, and rally together to do it.
Yeah, Sasha posted a comment here of a bunch of the examples of on-chain record keeping that could lead to really interesting composable meta games, and maybe some of the stuff that you're talking about, Ian, where you could consume that information to create your own versions that have a lot of incentives all around the table. But Sasha mentions the match records, which I started with, random number generator, loot boxing, item player patching, buffs, nerfs, item on-chain provenance for historical sets. Like, I think actually who owned an item over a course of history, like if they were wearing the item in a tournament and they won, like it'll be famous for that purpose, like kind of the way Counter-Strike skins can be kind of famous for those kind of reasons. So Sasha raises some interesting one. Topher had a question here, which I'll take a stab at answering, but I'm curious what everybody else here thinks. But Topher asks, do you think a game's UGC platform can take off before the game itself becomes very popular? So, I mean, here's my thought. I mean, of course, there's always going to be a counterexample in games. So whatever I say here is going to be wrong in some way. And actually, I love to be proven wrong. Like, I love to see someone who just had like a creative solution and figured it out. But here's my thoughts. What you're describing, when you say a UGC platform that can take off before the game itself becomes very popular, there's few people who have talked about this more than me, but you're describing what the metaverse sort of was purported to be for a lot of like 2020, 2021 kind of time frame, when everyone was like, oh, it's going to be this creative sandboxy build environment. But everyone forgot the fun of that process. Mm-hmm. And they were thinking about the tooling and how to do it. I mean, frankly, a lot of the tooling wasn't great either. The production values of the experience were circa 1990s kind of tech in a lot of cases. So even if they were done really well, though, I think you do need the fun of a core experience to lure people in. That's why Fortnite can build a metaverse around their platform, because Fortnite's fun. It's proven it's fun with 100 million players, and Minecraft is basically a metaverse. The closest thing to what Topher is talking about is kind of like Second Life, but I think Second Life is kind of the exception that proves the rule, because there weren't any other options at the time. Like, so it became a development tool, so to speak, for building experiences. So I don't know. I think it's going to be like, you need to have super fun game. And then if you can latch onto that and create a modding community, you can kind of start building outward from there. And that's where the UGC starts taking off.
I think that's generally true. I think that's all generally true.
Did you see that everywhere app, John? Sorry, I was gonna say, did you see that this morning everywhere where like they raised 300 million? You should look that one up and we could look at it. And sorry, you can go ahead, Chris. But yeah, that's one that I just saw this morning, and it reminded me of like they just raised a huge round. It seems to be a set of builder tools and not the game yet, but I'm not sure yet. I don't know either.
I think what I was going to say is I think the exception, I think that's true as a rule, that a game probably has to have momentum at a core product market fit before people want to mod it. The exception to that, I think, is Minecraft, where building and playing the game are exactly the same thing. And before you know it, you're starting to build. Like, that's the reason that's the biggest video game of all time, is before you even know it, you're kind of building and making things in Minecraft. And but there aren't a lot of other examples of like builder first, kind of games. Like usually it's kind of you start playing and then you start building. So that's the only one.
So much of that too, I think, comes from the devs having to like chew the glass and eat their own dog food is a big part of that too. That like if you start by just making tools to make any game, you're going to like screw yourself over, right? You're gonna end up building stuff that you didn't need to. Whereas I think I heard that doesn't Epic now have like they are forcing themselves to build Fortnite now in UEFN. Like they're forcing themselves to build Battle Royale in UEFN. So it's like but they didn't do that at the beginning. They're like, obviously everything's probably custom and hacky and rough, but they're like, all right, we're going to redo this so that we could show that anyone could make this quality of game. But like, there's no way they could have done that to start, right? It's just absolutely impossible.
I think the other thing is like, what do you mean by UGC? Because, like I started off thinking, we'll have this map builder tool. You'll be able to build your own maps, and we're still going to do that. And we built, we kind of already have the technology to do that because we have a whole addressable system. So the maps come in dynamically from the server, and we'll build a level editor on top of that we can use to build levels, and then give it to users. But even before you get there, I think like light customization, is like, because not everybody wants to like sit there and design. That's a very specific type of user. But a lot of people will customize and say like, oh, change the carpet to this texture, put my photo in that, put my NFT in that photo frame, like that kind of thing. And so I think the ability actually to do like customization and just make it feel like your own a little bit, combined with, if you look these really like light builder games, like the kind like the Scapes variety that on mobile, like you're not designing your home there, but you kind of feel like it because you're picking, 3 choices of carpet, 3 choices of drape, 3 choices of couch or whatever. So even though you have limited options, the mix and match lets you feel like you customized it. And I think that probably is something that is an easier, lower hanging fruit, combined with some of the advanced systems to actually run activities in it. That's kind of how I'm thinking at the minute, on the way to full customization,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting point. It's an interesting question. I mean, like Roblox, to me, I think back of like, well, I mean, that's been around for so long. People don't realize, I guess. You just kind of think like, oh, COVID or this. We're like, no, they've been working on that forever. And some of those games that have come out were like, I mean, those were really hardcore designed, like well made, even though the graphics can be goofy, like the core loop was just dialed in and amazing. And so games like Piggy or Adopt Me or whatever. And so I think like this notion of like, I'll make a UGC tool set that can allow anyone to make a game. Let's see, where do we start? Let's do side scroller platformers, and you're just like, who cares? Like, then everyone's just going to make a bunch of shitty side scroller platformers. Whereas I think once you get the whole audience in and you're starting to feel that vibe of what they're gravitating towards, then that's when you could start maybe, allowing the mods, allowing the customization, allowing the, light customization. So yeah, I would agree with you guys. Sounds similar. I think we're on the same page. We all agree.
So, this has been awesome, and it's also awesome to see the response here. We've got like 1,200 people in the live
Wow.
audience, so just keeps
Man.
growing. I'm
We're
almost
huge.
terrified by my own
Can we sell
creation here. We're
Can we
growing.
sell a sponsor? Can we get someone to pay us for this?
We need to launch a
Do you have
token while
any-
we're here.
Do we have a token on Pump Fun?
Yeah.
Put out right now. The Jon.
Oh my God, that would be so dope. We should okay, next time let's seriously do that. Let's launch a pump fun meme coin at the beginning and then see how much we can sell it.
Yeah, my blockchain lawyer, please don't.
Straight to jail.
Log into
I
that
wasn't
one.
here.
Don't log
I
into that
wasn't
one.
here.
We're not doing this.
I did not talk about this.
No, it's great to see the interest. No, seriously, as long as we've gone, our audience has consistently grown here. So here's the deal. We're gonna do this roughly weekly. I think we'll do it at about the same time, but I'd say follow me and Chris on Twitter. Chris, you're at Chris Heatherly, right? That's
yes.
nothing. I'm gonna post it. So
you just deployed it to Radium.
Just deployed. He cannot be serious.
Follow me, Chris, because we'll be the co-hosts of this regularly. And Ian, Matt, you're welcome to join us anytime you want. But we want to open up the floor to any developers. This isn't like the Chris and John show plus Ian and Matt sometimes show. It's for whoever has expertise that they want to bring into Web3, whether that's on the technology side, the game developer side, the investor side. That's sort of the vibe we want to go for, is from the side of people who are in the trenches actually building these things. It's not despite the comment about the pump coin the meme coin we're going to launch next week, it's not really about the degen aspect and pumping the latest coin that's out there.
I will bring the degen.
Yeah, well, I'll
be the resident degen.
I've been the degen in the room in plenty of those conversations, so therefore I know that there is not a shortage of those conversations happening online. So I'm hoping we can bring more of a different perspective, which is this pragmatic in the trenches, creative discussion around what people are building, and hopefully
you wouldn't say no to Iggy Azalea as a guest.
Sure. We'll
Man, just how quickly you caved. Yeah, sure.
Well, but I think we'll talk about it we'll talk with those people from a developer standpoint. We should talk about what's it like to do a KOL, what's it like to bring influencers in and market a game. Let's actually talk about that and what they do. I'd be curious if any. We got 1,200 people here, so we've got non-zero number of people that do that watching right now, just statistically speaking. So raise your hand and let us know whether you're willing to talk about the business model for that and how you help and how you can promote communities, because that's kind of a little bit of a shadowy, untold story of how people build out their communities. I think we should talk about that stuff. That would be super fun to kind of cast some light on it, because what we're really here to do is help people that are building games make good decisions, be successful with their game, build successful businesses. The biggest problem in games is creating a sustainable business from it. So
surviving.
Let's help people build game businesses, and the investors that back them also gaining an understanding of what other people are facing, maybe from outside their own portfolios, because they can import that knowledge into who they're going to back next or who they're going to help or what advice they can offer. So that's kind of the vibe that I was looking for this. So looks like we succeeded. We're still growing. We're 1,215 people now. So I don't know, keep growing. If you grew faster, if it was 10,000, I would be let's never stop. We'll just keep seeing how much of the world population.
We're going to go live. We're going to stay live, man.
But we set this for roughly an hour, and maybe an hour to an hour and a half will be kind of the typical time frame that we can do this for. But I really want to thank everybody for joining this broadcast and listening in. We've had some great questions. Come next week with your questions. And like I said, follow me and Chris, and you'll know about the next iteration of this. Sorry, I'm not super fast on the commenting. I'm not trying to exclude Matt or Ian from the Twitter follower count grab that we're obviously doing here. But, feel free to shout out your own Twitter handle for people to follow you as well, because you're working on some cool shit. But this is what we'll be doing, and want to just invite everybody to show up weekly. And I haven't even upgraded to like the super pro version of StreamYard. If we're going to have 1,000 people, I'm going to have to do that, because we got to broadcast to some additional platforms and Facebook and maybe some additional Twitter channels. Maybe we'll crack 2K next time. So thank you, especially everybody who showed up live. Chris, Matt, Ian, awesome to have this conversation.
Thank you, guys.
I hope you learned something from it, and all of you in the audience are coming away a little bit smarter and richer because of it. So thank you. Until next time.
That's fucking awesome, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.